Hi, I'm Tim and welcome to WatchYouWant.com. Today we're looking at an awesome watch that was the first of a distinguished line. This is the IWC Deep One of 1999. This watch, which is technically known as the IWC GST Deep One, represented IWC's first watch to integrate basically a mechanical depth gauge into an automatic winding dive watch, and this watch is full of toys. I mean, everything from a modular bracelet system to a JLC base movement, a unidirectional internal rotating bezel, a maximum depth hand, a mechanical depth gauge, probably the coolest boxed set I've ever seen on any dive watch, and we're going to get to that in just a moment because it's too cool to pass up. But let's just talk about what this watch represents. In 1999, IWC released the GST Deep One. Now, that company has a long history of innovation in the dive watch sphere, going back to their 1967 inaugural Aquatimer, which was rated far deeper than the average 100-meter dive watch of the day. It was a 200-meter watch. And then in 1982, with the Ocean 2000, they released the first titanium dive watch that could dive to 2,000 meters, and that watch also saw military service, so it was renowned in that respect, and it's become a substantial collector's piece, not in the least because it was designed for them by Porsche Design. Yes, Ferdinand Porsche. That Porsche, he of the 911. But this watch right here in 1999 introduced an all-new type of innovation, which was the ability to actually measure the depth of your dive and also record your maximum dive depth while timing your dive with the same instrument. And in order to do that, IWC started with a 43mm titanium case. It's actually between 42 and 43, but it's on the high side of 42, and it definitely wears like it. So this watch, made of titanium, was designed as light as possible to accommodate a large and complex internal mechanism that actually measures water pressure through this crown right here, and then there's an expanding ring within the movement, which is based on a JLC 891, because the 891 was smaller than a lot of the ETA movements that IWC was adopting at that time. They could build that circumferential ring around it, and the expansion of that ring actually dictates the movement of the mechanical depth gauge. Now there are two, I'm going to move them a little bit, but there are actually two separate hands. One is your maximum depth right there, and one is your depth gauge. And now you can see when you dive to a certain depth with this watch, and it'll measure up to 45 meters, but it is water resistant to 100. Their rationale being that's the safest depth for amateur diving, so IWC is actually being pretty practical here. But as you dive, that hand, the maximum hand, which is yellow triangle versus white triangle, will stay stationary so you know your maximum depth. So you can tell how deep you dove, and if for whatever reason you max that thing out and you lose track, you may want to consider decompression. But the bottom line is you can reset that by pressing that crown right there. Now that crown right there is also used to adjust the unidirectional internal diving bezel. Now today IWC is known for its safety dive bezel, but before that their signature was the unidirectional internal rotating bezel, a little bit like the old master compressor divers of the late 50s and 1960s. It's a very safe system, and it also protects the bezel from wear and tear, which is good because on this watch the bezel is fully, the rotating part of the bezel, including the yellow calibrated band right here, is fully loomed, so you actually retain full functionality of this watch, including bezel indications as you dive. Now there are a couple of different calibrated tracks here. The bezel itself is calibrated to represent time, which is good because you need to be able to time your dive safely. You align the top of the index with the minute hand and you start your timing from there. But then the outer track, which at first glance might appear to be a minutes track of some kind, this is actually the meters from which the depth gauge measures your depth of submergence. And you can see that that reference goes from 0 to 50 right here. So the calibrations actually end right here. That outer track, that is for the depth gauge. Beyond that, the watch has a lot of interesting features. In addition to having a JLC movement, which gives it a little bit of a pedigree in my opinion versus an ETA, the watch also has a unique titanium case that feels like it's hewn from a billet. I mean, this is just a gorgeous piece. This is characteristic of the old school IWC tool watch design aesthetic, both in the way it looks and the way it feels in the hand. This thing is titanium, so it's light, but in precision it feels like a bank vault, and it has the tolerances both in the bracelet and the case itself, of a precision instrument. In terms of precision instruments, IWC gives you the ability to adjust the bracelet with precision. Now you can see these little dimples inside the center links of the bracelet. Each one of those is actually a little pusher that works like a microcosmic version of a recent Panerai Luminor lug quick release. So you depress that little dimple and then you actually push. It's not a spring bar, it's just a solid bar. You push it through and it's that easy to size. Every single link in this bracelet is effectively a sizable link and is effectively a half link because of the narrow spacing of them. There's a lot of adjustability here. The entire bracelet matches the case in that it's titanium, and I like that it has the positive security of a trigger release. This is not friction fit. It doesn't snap when you pull it. You actually have to depress the lever and then open it, but it closes with a sound click, a reassuring click, and really, like everything else, that clasp is just redolent of IWC quality. And you've got a lot going on this dial, but despite that, it's highly legible. Again, everything is loomed, including the depth hands, including the rotating and non-rotating portions of the bezel, the outer meters chapter ring. You've got tremendous large indexes denoting all of the hours. The hands are broad and solid. This is a fantastic tool watch that bucks the trend of combining complication and illegibility. This watch is also a landmark piece, one of an estimated 1,000 made. You're not going to see these every day. The Deep 2 of 2009 and this year's Deep 3 are far more common. And the bottom line is, if you want the true collector's piece, first of all, the one that's evocative of old school IWC styling, and the one that's going to be least common, hardest to find, and most coveted by collectors, you want the Deep One. Again, this was part of the GST line back in 1999, and today it's something of an icon and a holy grail watch among IWC collectors. And let me show you a little bit of what makes this watch cool. Now, it does have a display case, inner and outer boxes, but it's also got this, which is a special. First of all, you've got an accessory strap should you want to put it on a piece of textile. You've got that option. But it also has this device, which is used to test and calibrate the depth gauge. If you're going to use this thing as survival gear, you sure as heck better know that it's up to the task. And mechanical watches, like all precision equipment, need periodic maintenance. And with this pump, you actually attach it to this crown right here, which is actually the crown that reads the pressure when you're submerged. And you can actually make sure by pumping it up and then airing it down that the depth gauge hand always returns properly to 0 at the index at 12. It's just a great way of fail-safing your own system, idiot-proofing it as it were, and it adds a lot of value to the set. Not just that IWC includes this, but that this particular example still has the accessory. Everything that you would want to receive with the watch from IWC back in the Y2K era, just before 2000, you're going to get with this watch from WatchYouWant.com. Now, this watch presents as absolutely new, indistinguishable from new. There isn't a scratch or scuff on the case. I can tell you that if this watch has ever seen salt water, you wouldn't know it, and it's certainly never seen a reef, because, again, not a single blemish on this case. Satin titanium, gorgeous to look at, feels wonderful on the wrist, minutely sizable because of that modular bracelet system, tapered, gorgeous, tight tolerances of manufacturing, and the most technical / legible dial that you'll see on any complicated sports watch. This is the IWC GST Deep One of 1999, available with full box papers and safety testing accessories from WatchYouWant.com. We are the luxury pre-owned watch authorities. Check out our website, WatchYouWant.com. Check out this GST Deep One. I'm confident that you will find the watch you want.